There are literally thousands of exercises out there. We know we can't do all of them at once. So it's our job to select the exercise or exercises, a few of them, maybe a bit more than a few, to target that thing that we need most. It's kind of like when you're building a team in sports, right? So you're getting pumped five goals in football every game. So the transfer window comes around, you got some money and you go ahead and you buy another striker. You're still copping 5 goals in the back of your net every game. That is the wrong thing to spend money on. You need defense. You need to learn how to defend. You need to maybe get another player to solidify your back line, maybe your defensive midfield, your structure. You need to do something to prevent you copping 5 goals every game. You might be scoring 2 or 3 goals yourself, but you're still losing. The game is about outscoring your opposition every game. So that's kind of what we need to do in weightlifting as well, in this journey that we're all kind of traveling on. There are many different things you can go for and do, but not necessarily some exercises is what you need. So I might need something different to you. On top of all of this, there's this idea of leverages. No matter what you do, because you have that type of player on your team, you're going to need different things than what my team needs because I have a different kind of player. Some players like to do certain things on a football pitch. Like, say Ronaldo, he doesn't like tracking back and defending. He's always kind of at the forefront and he saves his energy. Okay, so he's an attacking player. So I can't rely on him to run back. So I need to have more defensive coverage in the midfield because I'm not getting that pressure up front from Ronaldo. But then there's other players who play for other teams, other really good players who are also attackers, but they pressure the defensive line. They actually contribute to that defensive effort. So the teams that Ronaldo is on are going to be different than another team that has also a very good attacker. In that same way, you need to, as a weightlifter, as somebody that's on this journey, you've got a different puzzle to solve. And some of my pieces are not going to fit on your puzzle. So when you see me doing something and I'm telling you, for instance, my back squat stance for some reason makes my deadlift stronger. It keeps happening. The more volume I put into the squat, the deadlift improves exponentially, it seems, much more than my squat improves. So if you put that into your own program, it might not necessarily have the same effect to your strength. Each and every one of us has that one thing that we need to point out right now. It's just identifying what weakness is the current weakness at the moment, and it always changes. That's the weird thing about all of this. So let's say my hamstrings are really lacking right now, and I could be concentrating on the quads and the glutes and the back and all these other things. I can continuously use accessory exercises to target everything else other than hamstrings because I'm not aware that it's the hamstrings. And I don't really get any anyway. I just continue to get stunted growth because of the hamstrings. Then all of a sudden, I try something for hamstring and there's like a leap in strength. And then there's another plateau after that leap because I've developed another weakness, something else. Addressing the hamstrings no longer has that effect on my strength. It's something else. And as a master of this sport, as a master of training with the barbell, strength training or bodybuilding or whatever, you will develop the skill to identify what needs work. Sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes, going back to the soccer analogy, it's not necessarily the center back. Might not necessarily be his fault or their fault, the back line, because they continuously get exposed through the midfield. The midfield is so shocking and they're always +1 against the defense and they smash the defense because they're being outnumbered. So no matter what the defense does, they always get kind of ganged upon by the midfield, the lack of midfield play. So you can get another defender or you can get another strategy or change the tactics or maybe change somebody in the midfield that's not doing their work. Maybe change Ronaldo. Maybe shift Ronaldo to be a lone attacker and get another defensive. So there's so many different ways of doing it. Sometimes it's not as simple as, I'm copying 5 goals a game, I gotta get a defender or a goalkeeper. It's not necessarily that. It could be other things. And in the same kind of essence, we see that in weightlifting as well, man. It's so strange. Today, I had a fleeting thought. And when I have these fleeting thoughts, I just can't resist but implement some of these ideas. I've got anterior pelvic tilt. So any guy that understands anything about physiology, biomechanics will tell you, you have a weak anterior core and weak hamstrings. So you should concentrate on doing sit-ups or leg raises or any sort of anterior core exercise to strengthen the abs, the front of the core. Do something for the hamstrings, and you are going to return that pelvis into balance if you match that up with maybe some lower back stretches, but be very careful with that, and hip flexor stretching, maybe quad stretching. However, today I woke up and I felt really tight hamstrings. Now, I've been down this path before. Trust me, I've been down this path before. Stretching hamstrings, which are already long, doesn't make sense to restore anterior pelvic tilt. Today I was struggling with my hamstrings. For whatever reason, they felt really tight. So I went ahead and stretched them. I didn't show in this video, but between each of these sets, I was using that. You'll see it on the right side of the squat rack. I put like that safety pin really high. And I was throwing my leg over that and stretching in between sets. Deadlift, squats, I was doing all of that. And that tightness that I felt in the hamstring, it was kind of spilling over to the adductors, and I kept kind of stretching the adductor and hamstring, went back and forth. And I somehow momentarily unlocked a bit of mobility through that posterior leg. And I started feeling better and better, and my deadlift started feeling better and better, and ended up doing front squats really good, deadlifts, the back squats really good. I ended up doing back squats. I worked up to 200 for the first time in a long time. I just felt good because I was releasing that tension in the back. Now, how does that make sense to my brain? You're not supposed to stretch hamstrings with anterior pelvic tilt, man. You're supposed to be stretching the damn hip flexors. Yet I'm doing the exact opposite of what the current knowledge says, or my current logic says, and I'm getting some sort of positive effects. I'm getting some restoration of stability, of length, and I felt good in squats. But before, when I walked into the gym, I felt so tight through the hip and the hamstring. I've said this before to you guys. I previously said to you guys that early in the morning or just before a training session, doesn't matter what part of the day it is, if I simply, before I even touch the barbell, just do a standing reach test to my toes, toe reach test. And if I feel like I am tight through the hamstrings, I know for a fact I'm going to have a really poor squatting session because of poor mobility. I've said this to some of you guys as well. Some of you guys have said to me, I can't squat for crap, but I have really long hamstrings. I have a really good toe reach. And that's kind of puzzled me before. It's so hard to draw conclusions across the board because what I need might not necessarily be what you need. I'm puzzled. I don't understand why stretching my hamstrings today felt good. I don't understand. My understanding is when you have damn anterior pelvic tilt, you should be strengthening the hamstrings, not stretching them, because they're already long. They're already being pulled out of position because of that anterior pelvic tilt. That the hip flexor complex is just pulling the pelvis forward. You're spilling water. If we imagine the pelvis as a cup of water, we are spilling that water forwards. That's what anterior pelvic tilt is. And if you are squatting every day, you're going to be predisposing yourself to more anterior pelvic tilt. And then I start stretching my hamstrings and it feels good. I start releasing the hip. I don't know. It seems like I don't need a defender and I'm getting pumped 5-0. I need an attacker. The exact opposite. That's bizarre. But in a way, it kind of makes sense in the soccer analogy. If I just get another striker that pressurizes the backline of the opposition and makes their passing out of the back end more difficult, all of a sudden their midfield is compromised and they have to kind of flood back and rescue that backline. All because I have a striker that's pushing back, pushing forward, pressuring that backline. Weird, huh? An attacker contributing to your defense. This is the complexity of human movement. This is the complexity of sports. There's so many moving parts. There's so many different elements. And it's not always as simple as what the obvious says. You have a crap defense, your defensive line is crap. Not necessarily, man. I have anterior pelvic tilt. My hamstrings are all tight and weird. Stretch the hamstring. Okay, how does that make sense? How does that make sense, man? Theoretically, it's supposed to be the other way around. Stretch the hip flexors. sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to you guys that I have all the answers. I definitely don't. And what frustrates me the most is when I revisit the same damn ideas over and over and over again. And I sit here and I just scratch my head and I'm like, I have a feeling right now that I need to stretch my hamstrings. What gives me that feeling? I have no idea, man. It's just feeling real tight. So I stretch it and it feels good. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, you're not supposed to be stretching that shit, man. Just stretch the other side. Oh my goodness. Sometimes I feel like I'm literally chasing my own tail. Round and round and round and round we go. But I went from being projected to have a really poor session by the feelings that I was having in the car, and as I was walking in, I was like, man, I'm feeling stiff as all hell, man. It's not going to go well for me today. And then I started stretching the hamstrings, and I just started feeling better and better and better. And before I got to the gym, I was on Instagram. I was looking at, I'm going to get his name wrong, Muhammad Ehab, that Egyptian, I think he's an Egyptian weightlifter. I don't know why I can't remember his name, man. I've watched so much of him over the years. Incredible athlete, very, very strong. He's like top 3, I think, in his weight class. I think he's in the 80s or something. I think 81 kilo or something like that. Very, very accomplished lifter, very, very good lifter. I think he's in the same class as Lou, a lifter that I freaking admire like crazy, like I'm sure a lot of you guys as well. Incredible lifter. And he, in one of these pictures on Instagram, he was standing next to the bar, the squat rack, the squat stand, and he had his leg over the bar. And the bar was really high. I don't know where the hell it was. It was really, really high. He had his leg next to his ear. So he was standing one leg. He was basically doing splits, standing splits. And he had one leg right above his head on this bar. He was basically doing standing splits. So his hamstring, his whole glute complex is so freaking long. Couldn't believe how flexible it was. And I don't know why I get surprised, man, because Klokov is the same. Lou is the same. I've seen Tian Tao stretch as well. All these top guys, Olympic weightlifting, they're basically gymnast type of flexibility, but with the barbell. They're just handling the barbell instead of the rings or whatever the other sports are within gymnastics. So that in my mind and me feeling pressure in the hamstring, I'm like, the hell with it, let's stretch. If I'm going to have a bad session, let's freaking really have a bad session and really do the wrong thing by stretching the hamstrings. And voila, I felt better and better and better. And as I'm sitting here right now, I feel like I need to stretch my hamstrings. How, what, why, whatever, I don't know. One of you guys sent me an app, a link to an app or to a website, which basically is like I forget the name of it. It was probably 4 or 5 days ago, one of you guys sent me. Basically, it's like a website where you put all of your stats in, the lifts of their various different things, pull-ups, bench press, overhead press, squat, bench, deadlift, all that stuff. You put all that in, and at the end, it spits out what your strengths are in terms of musculature and what your weaknesses are. And of course, because I put a 265 in deadlift in, it came out that I had a really dominant posterior chain, and my quads are lagging. What else did it say? A whole bunch of other things, but it was telling me I had really, really strong hamstrings. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, I know that's a really kind of rough overview of somebody because they don't really know me. But if I have a really good deadlift, how the hell do I have anterior pelvic tilt? How does that work, man? Because in my mind, if somebody has a really strong deadlift, that means they have a really strong set of hamstrings and glutes. And wouldn't that combination put you into posterior pelvic tilt? But no, I don't have that. It's weird, man. It's telling me I have weak quads. I need to train my quads because the squat is considerably less. Yet I'm in anterior pelvic tilt. Man, sometimes I scratch my head. I've asked this question many, many times before. And the latest thing that's kind of guided my decision making and all of this is what Chad Wesley Smith said about all of this. Trying to work out what freaking muscle is weak on you. He basically said like this. I've said this before as well. You guys are like, Eva, I'm talking about it again. I am talking about it again because I've never stopped thinking about what he said. And it's kind of led me into the right path because I've had success recently with the squat and whatever. He basically said like this. You have a squat, right? What's weak on you? Is it the front of the leg or the back of the leg? Is it the anterior chain or the posterior chain? Is it the weak legs or weak back? That's another kind of division you can think about. He said like this: if you cannot grind a squat out, if you feel like you go to the bottom, you push up, and the moment your legs give out, there's no grind, you just kind of drop. That means you have strong legs and weak back. It's that weak back that doesn't allow you to grind. In reverse, if you have really strong back and weak legs, you will come out of the hole, same thing, and you will get to the grinding spot, but you won't stop the squat. You will have the ability to grind. Posterior chain will allow you, strength will allow you to grind. And if you lack that grinding ability, it automatically means you have a weak posterior chain and you have really strong legs compared to your posterior chain. Remember, when I say weak or strong, I'm talking in relation to each other. Everyone has a weakness. I don't care if you are squatting 400, 500 kilos, you have a relative strength and weakness compared to other parts. So when I say weak, I'm not talking about somebody that's untrained. I'm talking about you as a whole in comparison. Because that decision, that hypothesis that you make will lead your training down a certain path. So if you make a wrong diagnosis, you will give the patient the wrong treatment. And that will have obviously consequences because you're going to be addressing the wrong damn thing. So in a way, we are doctors. We are directors. We are managers of this puzzle. We need to work out what the puzzle is telling us. We need to work out the symptomology of this patient. We need to work out what's going on, take all that data in and make a decision. And if you make a wrong decision, you will see lack of progress. If you make a right decision, you will see some sort of progress. And that's what I keep coming back to. Am I making progress? Is my squat feeling better? And progress can be many, many different things. It can be range of motion, can be volume, intensity, time periods. There's so many different things you can improve on. And that kind of also adds to the complexity of it. My deadlift has been going up and up and up and up. Logically speaking, that has to mean that I have a strong posterior chain. And when I look at the way I deadlift, it makes sense, man, because it's all freaking posterior chain. I struggle with quad activation. I struggle with it. That also comes into effect when I have shorter arms relative to the rest of me. And so I have a really bent over position, starting position. I've got kind of longer legs. That kind of puts me in that disadvantage. So it's hard to process all of this. And I continuously scratch my head and I continuously go back to the training log, to the journal, trying to kind of make sense. Ivan, you've been down the path of this crap, man. There's so many schools of thought. There's so many different logical decisions that make sense. Like right now, two opposing ideas make sense to me, depending on how I present it. I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's frustrating. But make no mistake, I freaking love it. I love the struggle. And I love this realization, no matter what, man, no matter how long or what level I get to, there's always going to be a puzzle to solve. Because even if I start squatting 230 on the daily, there's going to be a new weakness stopping me from getting to 240 to 250. It's not always going to be just weak quads or just weak posterior chain. There's always going to be something because it's always in flux. You strengthen one thing, another thing needs strengthening. You throw in a turbo into your Evo 7, all of a sudden the transmission starts slipping. So what do you do now? Yeah, you can chuck in a bigger dinner plate turbo in the Evo 7. It's not going to get you any better times. Still, the clutch and the transmission is slipping. Until you address that weakness, you ain't going nowhere. That kind of mentality. It's all crazy talk, but kind of makes sense to me the way I think about it. But sometimes it's not obvious to kind of work out what needs work. Thank you to everyone on the list. Thank you to everyone on the comments on Instagram. Been struggling to get to everyone, but I'm trying real hard to get to everyone. Thank you to everybody. These conversations are never easy, trying to work out what's what. Sometimes I watch your videos, guys, that you guys send in, and I'm like, I wonder what do I reckon this guy needs? I even love to think about that. Kind of challenges me and my understanding of weightlifting, of biomechanics, challenges me. It's not just my puzzle that interests me, it's all everyone's puzzle. It's really weird because, I think about somebody else's movement pattern and I'm like, oh yeah, you need this. I love that. I love that diagnosis and kind of planning the treatment. Anyway, guys, I got to get out of here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.